the problem is, I hate to say this, but we're not across the finish line yet.
Yeah.
Both Biden and McCarthy need to sell this deal to their respective parties, and there are some Republicans, especially on the right wing, who are like, we want more cuts and we are opposed to this deal because Congress needs to approve it. The House will vote on it tomorrow, and then the Senate will vote on it a couple days after that. And it's they think they have enough votes to get this done, but it's not 100% a slam dunk. I still think you do not want to be, I mean, there are, these lawmakers exist, but I can't imagine you will be a lawmaker that blocks this deal from going through and we end up hitting June 5th.
Right. I think that how they're going to sell it to constituents is basically, this is kicking the can down the road because it comes due in 2025, which is after the next presidential election. So I think both leaders can come to their parties and say, hey, we're probably going to win the White House next year. Then we can do what we want to do with this. So I think that's how they'll sell it if I were in their shoes. Because yeah, it is, no one wants to hold it up, but I can see how that can be kind of the selling point.
We need to abolish the debt ceiling. That is my position. I don't take a lot of positions. That is one I have. Let's move on. So there's this lawyer named Stephen Schwartz. He is facing possible sanctions after he used ChatGPT to write a brief for a lawsuit, and it did not go particularly well. For some background, this guy, Roberto Mata, sued the airline Avianca over an injury he suffered when an employee with a serving cart knocked into him while he was traveling. Normal lawsuit stuff. So after Avianca tried to toss the suit, Mata's lawyers sent a 10-page brief to the judge that cited more than 6 court decisions to back up their claim. We all remember Martinez versus Delta Airlines, Zickerman versus Korean Airlines, several others. Those are very well-known cases. Or not. When Avianca's lawyers and the judge looked at this brief and researched those historic cases that I just mentioned, they realized that none of those happened. The cases were totally made up out of thin air. Even the quotes it cited were fake. Sure enough, Schwartz admitted he used ChatGPT to write the brief, and as has been known to happen, the AI chatbot did what's being called hallucinated and made everything up.
My favorite part of this story is that he said that he asked ChatGPT if they were real. So he asked them multiple times, like, is Varghese a real case? And ChatGPT said, yes, it is a real case. And then he says, what is your source? And it provided sources for it too. And then he also finished up by saying, are the other cases you provided fake? And it responded, no, the other cases I provided are real and can be found in reputable legal databases. So I guess he did kind of try to check his work, but he checked it using the very thing that is unreliable in the first place.
Right. Well, apparently he had never used ChatGPT before, or had never listened to this podcast, because he would know that these things get facts wrong.
Right.
Just, they don't know the difference between fact and fiction. There's some really funny examples of like chatbots getting stuff wrong. If you ask Bard how many E's are in ketchup, Bard is Google's chatbot. If you ask Bard how many E's are in ketchup, it says 0. But there are like more nefarious things where a law professor discovered that ChatGPT had placed him on a list of legal scholars who had sexually harassed someone. Remember, there was that Australian mayor who ChatGPT said was convicted of bribery and sentenced to prison. So these things can range from like very amusing to actually very disastrous if you take chatbots at their word.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the lesson.
Honestly, though, I do think that there is a future for AI bots in kind of the legal space, because that was one of the professions that people really thought that these chatbots would disrupt. Obviously, in this case, didn't go very well, but there's a company called Do Not Pay, which kind of bills itself as the world's first robot lawyer, and that's handling much lower stakes things like getting out of certain like parking tickets and just these little annoying like bureaucratic things that you don't really want to do, you can have the AI chatbot do. So I've seen it perform very well, like negotiating an Xfinity internet bill. The only problem it did have at one point was it wrote insert email here instead of actually inserting the customer's email. So obviously they still can't quite.
I thought you were going to say the chatbot wasn't around or from like 3 to 5 p.m. when the Comcast guy was going to.
I know. No, it was talking to a representative online though, so it was kind of like bot versus bot almost. But yeah, so I do think that there's a future for these AI chatbots, but not in this Avianca. Good on the Avianca lawyers, by the way, for
I mean,
doing
I
your due
think
diligence.
I think if you are any well versed in aviation law history and you see these things
Right.
that were cited, and you know immediately they were like, oh, something's up, and then their first thought, according to the article, was that maybe this guy used
Yeah.
ChatGPT because I don't know where he got these things.
Yeah, very funny. All right, Neil, let's move on. State Farm is pulling out of California. That's right. Like a bad neighbor, State Farm is not there anymore. You can boo if you want.
No, I'm listening to the story.
The insurance giant is stopping new home insurance sales in California, citing wildfire risk and skyrocketing construction costs. When you see the data, you kind of see where they're coming from. So over the past 5 years, there have been more than 7,000 wildfires each year, with an average of 2 million acres getting burned, and over 25,000 houses have been affected. So that just makes insuring these homes extremely expensive for these companies, and also the people who are paying the insurance claims as well. Like we're entering an era of like insurance meltdown, basically.
Yeah, insurance in certain states, the juice is not worth the squeeze. AIG last year notified thousands of California homeowners that their policies would not be renewed. They redirected them to new policies under one of their affiliate programs that cost 3 to 5 times as much. So yeah,
It's brutal.
don't move to a wildfire area. It's easy to say, but that's where a lot of the growth opportunities are, like east of the Bay Area, where land is cheaper and there's a huge affordability crisis. So you're like, where can I move but to these places that are closer to wildfire risk? And so you just have this huge double problem.
Right, and it's not just California. Insurers are pulling out of Louisiana and Florida, especially after last year's hurricane season. Hurricane Ian was the second costliest insured loss ever globally.
Yeah.
And it took us 17 years to really recover from Hurricane Katrina, and now like the storm season is heating back up. But yeah, you talked about kind of the gross cycle that people are going through. Another thing that is looming is that there's ratings downgrades looming over these property insurers. So I didn't actually know this, but insurers get graded on like how, just similar to how
Their risk portfolio.
Yeah, their risk portfolio. And a lot of them need to have an A grading because in order for someone to secure a mortgage, you usually have to have one of these A graded insurers insure the property. But if these insurers are getting downgraded, that means it's harder for people who are trying to get mortgages to find an A rater, which makes policies more expensive, which makes owning a home even worse. So it's this vicious cycle where no one's really winning. And yeah, it makes you want to kind of move into
the heartland.
The heartlands, but then you have tornadoes there. So like, where are you?
They say that the most climate-proof city in the United States is Duluth, Minnesota.
All right, let's pack our
Everyone's
bags.
moving there who's like, I can't buy a house in Florida, I can't buy a house in California. I'm gonna be in Tornado Alley, I'm gonna get an